Lime Books present Overpopulation.
Episode 2, Occipital Worm. Scene 1. Lying on my bed in perfect pose.
The final solution was an epic poem written by Charles Banks in Latin and English about a monk living in Lourdes. Written before the car accident that took his life and that of his wife, it was said to contain the secret to digital consciousness. A secret only his son, who survived the car accident as an 8-year-old, would be able to understand. Having chased around Europe to find his father's book, Philip Banks had been given the task of deciphering it. After several reads, he was none the wiser. The only good that had come from it had been meeting Zara Fontaine, with whom he was now engaged to marry. It was 3:23 a.m. Zara lay on his bed. Banks was wide awake. He looked across at her face. She had consumed too much wine the night before. Unlike her. Her spirits were high, occupied as she was with the detail of their forthcoming wedding. He leaned over and placed his lips on her forehead, then, safe in the knowledge that she was asleep, whispered, "Love you?" He donned his dressing gown and left for the kitchen, slotted sourdough into the toaster and boiled a kettle of water. Through the window he could see London, never so peaceful as at night. Zara appeared in his mind, laughing. Being a member of the Guard and 40 years old obliged him to marry. Why had I been so resistant? He felt lucky. She was 32, in her prime, with a beauty and maturity he both admired and desired. He left the Lancaster Gate Hotel to walk the streets. The night air seeped beneath his shirt and chilled his skin. He walked vigorously, with thoughts of Zara still in mind. He ran between parked cars, across empty roads, catching a lamp-post to spin around. Not a single car passed, not a single pedestrian in the middle of London. He skimmed along the pavement, chewing gum, feet barely touching slab. The police were asleep and robbers dead. Only the fox was awake, and the owl went to wit to woo. It suddenly occurred to him to stop and stand still. Is no one around? He craned his neck to the moon. His eyes adjusted. Light from the Milky Way shone bright, until it glistened and the planets span. Air rushed by his ears, and he stretched out his arms wide in a bold crucifix and called out across the night, "I'm in love!" Stars splashed over him. Particles from the Orion Nebula passed through his bones. Angel Venus had arrived. He left the ground light as a leaf, rising up towards the lamppost, rising, arms outstretched, fingers pointing, toes wiggling, drenched in emotion, eyes overpowered. He span and span round and round, above the trees, above the housing, rising high, higher, spinning, above the park, the winding Thames, the cluster of lights, the speckled sky. Above the din, skyward winging like a bird, chest pumping, heart thumping, mile on mile into orbit, on and on, beyond the moon, without a care, into the darkness and black beyond, to the Milky Way, in mindless bliss, escaping the aurora borealis. He rolled onto his back, his naked chest still hot from love-making. The sunlight set the curtains aglow and bathed Zara's pillow in gold. She's up. He saw the book. It rested on the side table at an uncomfortable angle, threatening to fall. He had read it during the night, while Zara had slept, and was now exposed. There was a rap at the door. He jumped out of bed and snatched the book and hid it swiftly in his sock drawer. "Breakfast is ready," sang Zara as she tiptoed along the corridor. "I have something I want to ask you." Did she see it? She knew of the book. After all, they had raced across Europe together to find it. However, Lord Martin had impressed upon him, "No one must see or know of the book." Over breakfast, he noted Zara's dressing gown carelessly ajar. "Would you like an egg?" Her ebony hair spilt over her shoulders as she leant forward to feed an egg onto his plate. For Banks, her dishevelled appearance only added to her appeal. He felt fully loaded once more. In the accounting between lovers, Zara seldom leveraged her hand. She was satisfied that he play her innamorato. "You were up last night?" He did not wish to answer. The inevitable subject of the book would come into play. What does Lord Martin think the book means? Just a few work issues." She did not believe him, and he knew it. Her increasing curiosity bothered him. In retaliation, he tugged at her dressing gown. "No, Philip, no. We have work." "So? We don't want to be late." Minutes later, they were joined like bent spoons over the kitchen table, causing its wooden legs to screech violently against the floor tiles. 20 minutes later, "Well, that was—" "Yes," replied Philip, "wasn't it?" They switched on the news. Pulsating music blared from the wall. Zara left to get dressed, while Banks laid a cup and saucer on the table in front of him. Boom, boom. "Here, in Kuala Lumpur, relations between native Malays and Chinese have never been so strained." The reporter stood before the Masjid Saidina Umar Al-Khattab Mosque in an open-neck short-sleeve shirt. "On Monday, just after noon, service 7 Chinese nationals entered this mosque and dragged Mrs. Nurul Anwar onto the street, where they beat her to death. It is claimed that the attack was designed to intimidate Malays refusing to sell to Chinese property developer Kunmin Construction. On Tuesday, the backlash led to the public lynching of K. Lin Kwong by a mob of angry clerics from this very mosque." An aerial shot of grey ships on the ocean. "This morning, Beijing sent 3 warships into the Straits of Malacca and is now demanding that those responsible for Kwong's death be deported to China for justice." Wide shot of reporter in front of mosque. "Trying times for the new Malaysian Prime Minister, Tunku Badawi. This is Idris Madaki in Malaysia for the BBC." He poured tea from the pot and swiped through his social media. Zara returned. "I have something I want to ask you." "Yes?" He left for his study to find his com button. As he attached it to his shirt, Zara appeared in the doorway. "I would like to show you something." There appeared on the wall a video of a rural property, a panorama of temperate green fields and large traditional wooden buildings and parked cars, surrounded by cattle in pens, and a landscape that flowed to nearby mountains. "Simon and Delilah are buying this. It's so Gucci." A South African narrator listed the property's features, while Zara beamed with happiness. She had binged on the clip. "What do you think?" "Lots of work." "Wouldn't it be marvellous to live there?" Philip cracked with laughter. "South Africa! Argentina! It's the Pampanella! Imagine it. You love the outdoors. Think of the 'my Spanish isn't that good.' You know," and she played with her glasses, "we don't need to work." There was seriousness between her eyes that pierced into him. He tilted his head to one side as if to question. With the money I have and the income from your commercial property, it's more than enough. We could escape, live the rest of our lives as we want to. Sorry, are you suggesting that we live in a ranch in Argentina? You are funny. Banks owned a large 5-bedroom house just outside London, which he had assumed they would live in after the wedding. It's just... And she held her tongue. She could feel the pressure he was under. He claimed that it was due to work. Intuition told her otherwise. They had met through his friend Billy, to whom she had been engaged, albeit briefly. It had been their chase to find his father's book that had cemented their relationship. After a whirlwind romance, Banks had proposed, and they had made plans to marry. Once Philip left for work, she found the book in his sock drawer and stroked its cover. She murmured its title softly. The Final Solution. It fell open at a page that had its corner folded. She read that page. On cursory inspection, it was a badly written poem that made little or no sense. Why go to so much trouble to involve me in finding this book, then keep it a secret from me? She decided that it was time to ask a friend. She picked up the book and fetched her coat. You have been listening to Overpopulation, the hidden agenda for global reset. Book 3 in the Philip Banks trilogy by Robert Salisbury.